Hey guys, it's John from That DIY Couple. I am an Ivy League educated attorney and real estate investor. On this channel, we talk about how to fulfill your potential in life and how to make the world a better place. Today I'm talking about my 5 biggest regrets. So I don't really have a ton of regrets in life per se, but there are certainly things that I wish that I could have done differently in my 34 years. And I think exploring them in a public way, talking about them, and maybe hearing from you guys your impressions and your thoughts and your own regrets is a great way for self-reflection and self-growth. The number one regret that I have is not following my true self in running a startup. I went to law school and worked as an attorney for a year. This is 2011 to 2012. Between 2012 and about 2016 or so, I ran a couple of different technology companies, mostly out in California and then a little bit on the East Coast in New York City and New Jersey. I had started these companies in 2010, 2011, and then I decided to do them full time in 2012. I learned a lot through these companies, but none of them were what I would describe as a success on almost any level. They weren't certainly a financial success for me relative to the amount of time that I spent working on them. They weren't personal successes for me in that I felt really good about what I was building or doing despite the fact that I didn't make any money. I didn't make a lot of new friends or a lot of new connections, although some of those connections and friends have helped me a little bit later in life. I certainly learned a lot about myself and informed what I want to do later in life, and that's kind of what I'm doing now as an extension of what I did before. But the biggest regret and problem that I had in my startup career was that I got really sucked into a very particular startup mentality. I decided that the only way to be an effective startup person was to be totally obsessed with my company. That's what I had read, like everybody does. You know, that's what Steve Jobs does. That's what Elon Musk does. That's what these people did, is they just focused in on their company and did only that. And so I decided that that's what I would do. I would do no other things. I wouldn't have other hobbies. I wouldn't have other projects. I would just focus only on my startup. And I realized 2 things. 1, that makes me really, really unhappy. And 2, I've become very, very, very ineffective. The most effective that I am is just by piling stuff onto my schedule. Like if I only have 10-minute allotments to do stuff, I'll do everything as quickly as I can and I'll be really efficient and feel really fulfilled by doing it. And I also just don't like working where I'm only obsessed on one thing. My mind, my attention span, whatever else is such that I need to be jumping from thing to thing. I need to have that mental gymnastics going on for me to feel happy. I started doing this because I believe that that's what startup founders did, and it turns out that that's not at all the way that I work. And I also felt that I had to conform to all these other expectations and molds of startup founders that I didn't really fit into. You know, there's like the startup founder that's a really good smooth talker, really good salesperson. That's not me. That's not exactly my personality type. And there are these really toxic tropes too that people don't really talk a lot about the startup world. But there's misogyny, really bad misogyny, racist things, just all sorts of weird things that flow around Silicon Valley that, again, are not me. Things that I didn't want to have to embrace, and I felt that I did have to embrace them. And I also learned that I need to do my own thing. I can't conform to the stereotype of somebody else. I can't envision or idolize one person and think, hey, I have to be exactly like that person or I'm not going to be successful. I super regret not being true to myself in that way, but it certainly was a lesson that I'm happy that I learned. The second biggest regret that I have is related to a lot of stuff we do in this channel, which is about weight and body image. So throughout, my whole adult life, I was overweight. And that was born a lot by the fact that I never really knew a lot about health and nutrition as a kid, particularly not at all in high school when I started to gain a lot of weight. And I always had a really negative self-image of myself. And a lot of that was born by the fact that I never did any sports. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess, when you never get introduced to it as a kid. You think, I never did sports, in middle school or whatever, therefore in high school I must be unathletic. Or I never did sports in high school. By the time I'm in college, I think there's something, I'm just not an athletic person because I never did sports. And that's me, I never was exposed to that. And the flip side of that, I was never exposed to about eating right, maintaining a healthy body weight, kind of just maintaining myself. It really was not until recently, until basically my 30th birthday, when I lost a bunch of weight, and then also began more recently exercising, running, lifting, all that sort of stuff. And now my body image is a lot more positive. You know, for years, for decades, I would kind of look at my body in like disgust. You know, I'd be embarrassed, I'd be ashamed. And again, propagating that myth about me being the sort of person that's not athletic, the sort of person that is overweight or, you know, whatever, just like my personality type, my body type. Definitely not a positive thing, definitely contributed to a lot of my anxieties. I certainly think that if I could go back and tell my 15-year-old self, like, look, you know, you can be athletic, you can lose weight, you can look good, that would have probably changed my life quite a bit. My third major regret in life is not embracing my interest in music enough. So music has always been a really big part of my life, making music. When I was a kid, I played the piano. I learned to play the piano really young. I was like 5 or 6, I think. I played all the way through elementary school. When I was in high school, I was involved in a bagpipe performance group. I played the bagpipes. I was like the pipe major, which is the president of the group. It's a big part of my high school experience. In college, I was in a singing group as well. That was a big part of my college experience. And I also played the bagpipes again in a different group. So music was always like a part of what I did. I didn't even really think about it. Like I didn't seek it out, it just was something that I did. And when I went to law school and a little bit further on, music became not a part of my life. In law school, there wasn't really an obvious way for me to do what I wanted to do. There wasn't like a singing group at my law school or anything else. I played a little bit of the bagpipes kind of on the side for fun, but it wasn't really something that I knew how to do. And then in my real life, you know, professional world, I had no outlet for that. I really had to seek that out to do it, and I just didn't. So from the age of, you know, 23 until recently, I had no musical outlet. I didn't really play music. I occasionally played the bagpipes for fun, and I would sing karaoke, which I really liked, but that's not a big musical outlet. And I realized really only in the past year or so that music is really important for me. It's really a way for me to express myself and also a way for me to feel calm and grounded. So I've been playing the bagpipes a lot more during the quarantine period, and I'm hoping that once that eases up, I'll be able to play with a group of other people, which I really, really like and really enjoy. And I think that for me to be fully realized and actualized, music has to be a part of who I am, because it's a part of who I was. Those 10 years of my life when I didn't do that, I think I was missing out on some part of myself, and I've realized I need that to feel actualized. The fourth biggest regret that I have is in investing. So I was not confident enough in my investment decisions to go all in on certain projects. So what I'm talking about is when I first started investing, I was investing in northern New Jersey, in Hudson County, New Jersey. I bought a lot of properties that were performing very well, and I couldn't convince myself or other people that we needed to buy more of those types of properties. I only bought, I mean, this sounds like maybe silly, but I only bought 7 properties. 7 is a lot, but I think I could have bought like 70 of them if I was really confident. Those 7 properties have been huge successes. I've now sold 6 of them. All those properties were really big money makers, and I saw so many properties during that time period that I passed on because it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It was maybe a little bit too expensive, or I couldn't find investors, I couldn't structure it, I couldn't get people together to do it. And the problem is that I was just not confident enough in my own abilities and my own thinking to go all in on it. And I'm trying to rectify that right now with a lot of my investments in Atlantic City. I've talked about this on the channel before. I'm gonna do some more videos about Atlantic City specifically, but I'm going all in. Like, I'm putting all the chips on the table for this one project. And I feel really good about it. It feels like something I'm meant to do, something I'm really actualized doing. But if I had done that 4 or 5 years ago, I would be in a much different financial position and, you know, many different positions right now. And I knew it. That's the thing. It's like it wasn't concerning in my mind. I wasn't unsure about it. I knew it. I just couldn't get myself to the point where I was able to put the pedal to the metal and go all the way. I couldn't raise the money. I couldn't just affect it enough. I regret that, but I'm trying to rectify that right now, and I'm excited about what I'm doing. But again, if I go back 4 or 5 years and tell myself 4 or 5 years ago, hey, like, put the pedal to the metal, you're gonna do it, like, that would be awesome. And my final thing that I regret throughout my life is letting my shame and embarrassment prevent me from doing what I want to do. So this is like a really big one for me, but throughout my whole life, I've struggled with a big feeling of shame in one form or another. I talked about it a little bit with some of the other regrets about being overweight and my body image. I had a lot of shame about that. I had some social anxiety stuff, shame about that. I had a unique childhood that is not super relevant to this video, but, you know, I had shame resulting from that, just feeling about myself, my place in the world, who I was, kind of like contextualizing who I was in the world. And I've often let that get the better of me. I've let that restrict me from doing things that I want to do. Again, like my previous point about investing, I let that feeling of embarrassment, of imposter syndrome almost, prevent me from going all in on these different projects. And it's something that I still struggle with a lot today, that I think about a lot and try to address a lot, try to do exercises to overcome that. But again, I still struggle with the idea of asking people for what I really want, kind of being assertive, saying like, here's what I really think, here's what I really want, here's like how I can really achieve my goals with your help, is tough for me. And those feelings of shame, embarrassment get triggered in different ways still for me, and it's tough. And that's maybe my biggest regret, is allowing that type of thing to go unaddressed. I've been aware of it, but I've only really begun to address it in a systematic way in the past year. And I'm happy about that, but I look back and I think, again, in my startup days, what if I allowed a little bit of my own confidence to come through myself, felt a little bit less shame, embarrassment, anxiety, whatever, and just push a little bit harder, just let myself come through a little bit more. Part of that is doing this YouTube channel, right? I felt some shame, embarrassment about putting myself on video, about talking about myself in a way it seems really narcissistic almost, really self-obsessed. That's that like embarrassment coming up. But being able to do it has been part of my healing. So I regret being in that position for a long time, but I'm happy now that I'm learning and I'm healing from it. So those are my 5 regrets for life. Maybe you guys can relate to some of them. I would love to hear your regrets or your thoughts below in the comments. I'm sure as I continue to live life, I will have other regrets, but I'm hoping that I won't have the same regrets. So I've evolved from regrets to have other regrets. But thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'd love any interaction, comments, thoughts that you have. But until next time, do good and always make things better.
Oh.